My husband punched my stomach after learning I'd used my savings for a bank investment, screaming, "How dare you waste my money, you witch!" That cash was for my sister's car. He threw me out of the house. A week later, he collapsed in shock when he found me sitting at the CEO's desk. Then I whispered, the taste of burnt spaghetti and the lingering sting of betrayal. That's how my old life ended. But what if that very same, devastating moment was actually the precise catalyst, the shocking turning point, that finally birthed the woman I was always meant to be? The air in our downtown Chicago apartment always felt heavy, but on that particular night, it was suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards echoed the growing chasm between us, and the sound of Ethan's heavy footsteps pacing back and forth in our small living room felt like a ticking time bomb. I knew the explosion was coming. I just didn't know when. The walls seemed to close in on me as I stirred the pot of spaghetti sauce on the stove, trying desperately to focus on anything but the impending confrontation. The aroma of garlic and basil, usually so comforting, did little to calm the frantic beating in my chest. Ethan and I had been married for 10 years, but recently, it felt like we were strangers sharing the same suffocating space. We'd met in college, both bright-eyed and full of dreams. He was all about business. I was lost in the world of economics, and we bonded over our shared love for numbers, our ambitious plans for a future that felt limitless. Back then, I honestly thought we were unstoppable, a team poised to conquer anything. But life, as it often does, has a way of grinding you down, doesn't it? After graduation, reality hit us like a brutal punch. The job market was a barren wasteland, and we both ended up in positions that were miles away from our starry-eyed aspirations. Ethan, he watched his college buddies climb the corporate ladder. Their success is a constant, painful reminder that he was stuck in a dead-end job at a local bank, growing increasingly bitter with each passing day. I tried to be the optimistic one, plugging away as an accountant for a small firm, always searching for an upward trajectory, a glimmer of hope. But as the years piled on, the distance between us widened, becoming an unbridgeable canyon. Our conversations became clipped, our dreams shrinking, shriveling into nothingness. The blazing passion that once fueled our relationship had fizzled out, replaced by a silent, festering resentment that neither of us dared to acknowledge. Yet I refused to give up. I spent my evenings devouring everything I could about the stock market, poring over financial blogs, watching investment tutorials online. I was determined to find a way to improve our situation, to reignite that spark we'd lost. That's when I stumbled upon it, a promising stock. It was a small tech company developing innovative software for the healthcare industry. Everything about it screamed potential, a beacon in our darkening lives. I spent weeks analyzing their financials, researching their management team, tracking every industry trend. I was utterly convinced this could be our ticket to a better life, our escape route. So I made a decision. A terrifying, exhilarating decision. I invested our modest savings, $5,000 we'd meticulously set aside over years, into the stock. I knew it was a risk, a monumental gamble, but I believed in it with every fiber of my being. I had planned to tell Ethan that night, hoping he would see my vision, share my excitement, finally feel that old thrill of possibility. But the moment I heard the front door slam earlier that evening, a jarring sound that echoed through the apartment, I knew something was terribly wrong. He stormed into the kitchen, his face a mask of incandescent fury. Before I could even murmur a greeting, he launched into a tirade about his sister, Jessica, needing money for a new car right now. My stomach plummeted, a cold dread washing over me as the terrible, sickening timing of my investment hit me. "Ethan, please, let me explain," I pleaded, quickly turning off the stove, my hands shaking as I faced him. "I found this incredible investment opportunity." Investment. He spat the word like it was poison, his eyes blazing. "You mean you gambled away our savings without even telling me?" I tried to keep my voice steady, despite the fear clawing its way up my throat. "It's not gambling, Ethan. I've done extensive research. This company has amazing potential. If we just give it some time." Time? He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that pierced me. We don't have time, Olivia. My sister needs that money now. How could you be so selfish? His words stung, a venomous lash, but I stood my ground. I'm not being selfish. I'm trying to secure our future. If this pays off, we could finally afford to buy a house, maybe even start a family. Ethan's eyes narrowed dangerously, a cold, hard glint appearing. A family? You think I want to start a family with someone I can't even trust? Each word felt like a knife twisting in my heart, a slow, agonizing turn. You can trust me, Ethan. I've always had our best interests at heart. Remember when we first met? We talked about taking risks, about building something great together. That was a long time ago, he said, his voice dropping to an icy monotone. We were naive kids back then. This is the real world, Olivia. And in the real world, you don't throw away your family's money on some pipe dream. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and insistent, but I blinked them back fiercely. I would not let him see me cry. It's not a pipe dream. If you just listen to me, I could show you the research I've done. This company. I don't want to hear about your damn company. Ethan roared, slamming his fist down on the kitchen counter. The sudden, violent sound made me jump, and I instinctively took a step back. In that moment, I saw something shift in his eyes. The anger was replaced by something darker, something I had never seen before. It terrified me. Ethan, I whispered, trying to diffuse the escalating tension. I know you're upset, but we can figure this out together. We've always been a team, remember? But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. He was pacing again, running his hands through his hair, his frustration a palpable, volatile force. A team? He scoffed, a sneer twisting his lips. A team doesn't make unilateral decisions about their shared finances. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying one last time to appeal to the man I once knew. I know I should have talked to you first. That was my mistake, and I'm sorry. But please just give this a chance. If it doesn't work out, I'll take full responsibility. I'll get a second job if I have to pay back Jessica. For a fleeting second, a flicker of the old Ethan, the man I'd fallen so deeply in love with, seemed to appear in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came. How dare you spend that money, you witch? He spat, his voice echoing, filled with such venom that I flinched. It's not just your money. I was saving that for my sister's car. I opened my mouth to respond, to try one last, desperate time to explain, but I never got the chance. Before I could even react, Ethan's fist struck me squarely in the stomach. The pain was immediate, blinding, intense, knocking the wind clean out of me. I gasped, stumbling backward, my hips slamming hard against the kitchen counter. As I struggled to breathe, clutching my throbbing stomach, I looked up at Ethan in utter disbelief. This couldn't be happening. The man I had loved for over a decade, the man I had built my entire life with, had just hit me. The physical pain was a dull ache compared to the agonizing, soul-crushing betrayal that washed over me. Ethan seemed shocked by his own actions for a split second, a flicker of horror crossing his face, but then his features hardened again, an impenetrable mask. He turned his back on me, his parting words cutting deeper than the blow itself. Get your things and leave. I've had enough of you. I slid down to the cold kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face, hot trails on my skin. The spaghetti sauce on the stove had started to burn, filling the air with an acrid, bitter smell that perfectly matched the desolation in my heart. As I sat there, gasping for breath, trying to process the incomprehensible, I realized that this moment, this horrific, gut-wrenching moment, marked the end of everything I had known for the past 10 years. The dreams we had shared, the life we had meticulously built together. It all came crashing down in a single, brutal instant. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of hurting me, not just with words, but with his fists. As the initial shock began to wear off, a strange, undeniable sense of clarity washed over me. I knew, with absolute, unwavering certainty, that I couldn't stay. This wasn't a fight we could come back from, Not a problem we could solve with hollow apologies and empty promises. This was the end. With shaking hands, I pulled myself up from the floor. My stomach throbbed where Ethan had hit me, a constant, searing physical reminder of how utterly toxic our relationship had become. I looked around the kitchen, the half-cooked dinner, the unwashed dishes in the sink, the faded curtains we had picked out together years ago. A profound sense of loss settled over me. But beneath the pain, beneath the fear, I felt something else stirring. A tiny spark, a defiant ember, a burning determination. Ethan might have told me to leave, but I suddenly realized that this was my choice now. I was choosing to walk away from a situation that had become not just toxic, but dangerous. As I moved towards our bedroom to pack my things, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My eyes were red and puffy from crying, my hair a mess. But there was something different in my expression, a strength I hadn't seen in years. I may have lost my husband, my home, and my sense of security in one terrible evening, but as I began to gather my belongings, I made a silent promise to myself. This would not be the end of my story. This would be a new beginning. I don't know how long I lay on that cold kitchen floor, my tears pooling beneath me as the raw reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Ethan's words echoed in my mind, "Get your things and leave. I've had enough of you." The chilling finality of them, coupled with the lingering, throbbing pain in my stomach where he had struck me, finally propelled me into action. With shaky legs, I pulled myself up, using the kitchen counter for support. The apartment was eerily quiet now, save for the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from Ethan's parents. Each tick felt like a countdown, urging me to leave before things got worse, before he came back. I made my way to our bedroom. No, his bedroom now, and pulled out the battered suitcase from the top of the closet. It was the same one we had used on our honeymoon to Niagara Falls, a trip overflowing with laughter and promises of a bright, endless future. Now, it would carry the pathetic remnants of my shattered marriage. As I began to pack, every item I touched brought a flood of memories, some sweet, now tasting bitter. There was the soft blue sweater Ethan had given me for my birthday 3 years ago. I remembered how his eyes had lit up when I opened the gift. I folded it carefully and placed it in the suitcase, my hands lingering on the fabric. Would I ever be able to wear it again without thinking of him? Next came my work clothes, sensible blouses and slacks that I wore to my accounting job. I packed them mechanically, my mind drifting back to the investment I had made. Despite everything that had happened, despite the horror, I still believed in that stock. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the future I had envisioned for us, a future that now seemed impossibly out of reach, but a future I still desperately craved for myself. As I moved around the room, gathering my belongings, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the dresser. We looked so young, so ridiculously happy. Ethan's arm was around my waist, and we were both grinning at the camera, our whole lives ahead of us. I picked up the frame, my finger tracing the outline of our smiling faces. For a moment, I was tempted to pack it, to hold on to this one tangible piece of our happier days. But then I remembered the cold, hard look in Ethan's eyes as he hit me, and I set the photo face down on the dresser. Some memories, I realized, were better left behind. I moved to the bathroom, gathering my toiletries. The familiar scent of my shampoo hit me, and suddenly I was overwhelmed by the mundane normality of it all. Just this morning, I had stood in this very spot, getting ready for work, completely unaware that my entire life was about to violently unravel. I choked back a sob as I tossed my toothbrush and face wash into a small bag. Back in the bedroom, I opened my jewelry box. Most of the pieces inside were gifts from Ethan over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries, apologies after arguments. I hesitated, unsure if I should take them. They were mine legally, but they felt tainted now. In the end, I took only the simple silver necklace my grandmother had given me before she passed away. Everything else, the glittering, tarnished symbols of a broken past, I left behind. As I zipped up the suitcase, I realized how little I was actually taking with me. 10 years of marriage, reduced to a single suitcase and a bag of toiletries. It seemed impossible that my life could be packed away so easily. I glanced at the clock. Barely an hour had passed since the fight in the kitchen. Ethan hadn't come to check on me, hadn't tried to apologize, hadn't made a single move to stop me from leaving. The silence from his end of the apartment was deafening, crushing. With my bags packed, I took one last, lingering look around the room. My eyes fell on the bookshelf in the corner. Among the various novels and textbooks was a small leather-bound journal, my dream journal. I'd started it in college, jotting down my hopes and plans for the future. Over the years, I had continued to add to it, even as those dreams seemed to slip further and further away, lost in the marital quicksand. I walked over and pulled the journal from the shelf. Flipping through the pages, I saw entries about starting our own business, traveling the world, having children, dreams that Ethan and I had once shared, but had somehow lost along the way. I clutched the journal to my chest and slipped it into my bag. If nothing else, I would hold on to my dreams. As I wheeled my suitcase into the hallway, I was struck by how bright it seemed. The overhead light that had been flickering for months, a job Ethan had promised to fix but never got around to, now shone steadily, illuminating the path to the front door. It felt like a sign, a guiding light towards a brand new chapter of my life. I paused at the kitchen doorway, looking at the mess from our interrupted dinner. The burnt smell of the forgotten spaghetti sauce still hung heavy in the air. For a moment, a force of habit, I suppose, I considered cleaning up. But then I stopped myself. This wasn't my responsibility anymore. As I reached for the front door handle, I heard movement from the living room. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of utter indifference. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. I searched his eyes for any sign of remorse, any indication that he wanted me to stay, any hint of the man I loved. But all I saw was cold detachment. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice stronger, more resolute than I expected. "I don't know where I'm going, but I know I can't stay here." Ethan nodded, his expression unchanged. "That's probably for the best," he replied, his tone flat, devoid of emotion. I waited for more. An apology, a desperate plea for me to stay. Anything. But nothing came. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the bitter, unspoken words we should have said to each other years ago. Finally, I turned away. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said softly, opening the door. As I stepped into the hallway, dragging my suitcase behind me, I felt a strange, unsettling mixture of emotions wash over me. There was fear, of course. Fear of the unknown, of what lay ahead. But there was also an unexpected sense of relief, a fragile, burgeoning excitement. For the first time in years, I felt truly, terrifyingly free. The elevator ride down to the lobby was surreal. As I watched the floor numbers tick down, I thought about all the countless times I had taken this same ride. Going to work, coming home. Always to the same monotonous routine, the same bitter arguments, the same crushing disappointments. But not anymore. When these doors opened, I would be stepping into a new life. Outside, the Chicago night air was crisp and cool against my tear-stained cheeks. The city lights twinkled around me, a dazzling, vibrant contrast to the darkness I felt inside. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, my suitcase at my feet, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. Where would I go? What would I do? I had some money saved in my personal account, a small emergency fund, but it wouldn't last long. I needed a plan. As I pondered my next move, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my friend Sarah. "Hey girl, we still on for brunch this weekend?" I stared at the message, a sudden, unexpected lifeline in the chaos of my thoughts. Sarah, of course. She had been my best friend since college, always there for me through thick and thin, always my steady anchor. Before I could talk myself out of it, before doubt could creep in, I hit the call button. "Olivia?" Sarah's cheerful voice answered, a stark contrast to my internal turmoil. "What's up? Isn't it a bit late for a call?" I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. "Sarah, I need a place to stay. Just for a few days." The words caught in my throat. Something happened with Ethan, and I couldn't finish the sentence, but I didn't need to. Sarah's tone immediately changed, laced with concern and unwavering loyalty. "Oh, honey, come over right now. I'm sending you my address. Stay as long as you need, okay?" Relief washed over me, a warm, unexpected balm to my battered soul. "Thank you," I whispered, unable to say anything more. As I hailed a cab to take me to Sarah's place, I looked back at the apartment building one last time. Somewhere up there, Ethan was probably sitting in the dark, perhaps even regretting his actions, perhaps not. But I couldn't think about that now. I had to focus on moving forward, on simply surviving. The cab pulled up, and I loaded my suitcase into the trunk. As I settled into the back seat and gave the driver Sarah's address, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Yes, my marriage had ended in the most brutal way imaginable. Yes, I was leaving behind the only life I had known for the past decade. But I was also leaving behind the fear, the disappointment, the slow, soul-crushing erosion of my self-worth. As the cab pulled away from the curb, carrying me towards an uncertain future, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what happened next, I would never again let anyone make me feel small, worthless, or afraid. I would rebuild my life, piece by painstaking piece if I had to, and I would make it better, stronger than before. The city lights blurred as we drove, and I felt a single tear roll down my cheek. But this time, it wasn't a tear of sadness or fear. It was a tear of fierce, unyielding determination. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first few days at Sarah's place passed in a blur of grief and numbness. I spent most of my time curled up on her lumpy couch, staring blankly at the TV or out the window, replaying that fateful night over and over in my mind. Sarah, bless her heart, was an angel. She brought me tea, ordered my favorite takeout, and, crucially, didn't push me to talk until I was ready. It was on the third day when I finally broke down and told her everything. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, mugs of coffee growing cold between us, as I poured out the whole horrific story, the investment, the brutal fight, the hit that changed everything. "Oh, Olivia," Sarah whispered, her eyes full of compassion, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm so incredibly sorry you went through that. But I'm so proud of you for leaving. You did the right thing." Her words were like a balm to my battered spirit, a gentle whisper of hope in the darkness. For the first time since that night, I felt a glimmer of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. As the days turned into a week, I slowly began to emerge from my fog of grief and shock. I knew I couldn't stay on Sarah's couch forever. I needed to figure out my next steps. But every time I thought about job hunting or apartment searching, I felt utterly overwhelmed. How could I start over from scratch at 32? It was during one of these moments of despair that my phone pinged with a notification. Absently, I checked it, expecting another worried message from a coworker or friend. Instead, it was an alert from my investment app. My heart raced, a sudden, sharp jolt, as I remembered the stock that had caused so much trouble. To my shock, the value had doubled overnight. The small tech company I had invested in had just announced a major partnership with a leading healthcare provider. Their stock was soaring. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice shaky with disbelief. "Sarah, you won't believe this." She rushed in from the other room, concern etched on her face. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in my throat. "Everything's right. The investment, it paid off. It actually paid off." We huddled over my phone, watching in amazement as the numbers kept climbing. By the end of the day, my initial $5,000 investment had turned into $15,000. It wasn't a fortune, no, but it was enough. Enough for a fresh start. That night, as I lay on Sarah's couch, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, I made a decision. This windfall wasn't just about the money. It was a sign, a powerful affirmation that I could trust my instincts, that I had value beyond being someone's wife. It was time to take absolute control of my life. The next morning, I woke up early, filled with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I brewed a pot of coffee and set up my laptop at Sarah's kitchen table. It was time to put my economics degree to good use. I spent hours researching, devouring financial blogs, watching investment tutorials, analyzing market trends. I didn't just want to understand what had happened with my lucky investment. I wanted to learn how to replicate that success, to truly master it. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's kitchen table became my command center. I created intricate spreadsheets, studied company reports, and even started a small blog documenting my learning journey. At night, when Sarah came home from her job at the local newspaper, I'd excitedly share my newfound knowledge with her. "You know," she said one evening, as I explained the intricacies of dividend investing, "I've never seen you this passionate about anything before. Not even back in college." Her words stopped me short. She was right. Somewhere along the way, in the midst of my crumbling marriage and dead-end job, I'd completely lost my passion. But now it was back, and it was back with a vengeance. As my knowledge grew, so did my confidence. I started making small, calculated investments with the money I'd earned. Some paid off, some didn't, but each one taught me something new. I learned to trust my instincts while also doing thorough research. I learned to be patient, to think long-term rather than chasing fleeting quick gains. About a month after I'd moved in with Sarah, I decided it was time to find my own place. My investments were doing well enough that I could afford a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, just a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom, and a main room that served as both bedroom and living area, but it was mine. The day I moved in, hanging up my clothes in the cramped closet and arranging my few possessions, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't experienced in years. That night, as I sat on my secondhand couch, eating takeout and looking out at the Chicago skyline, I pulled out my old dream journal. I flipped through the pages, past all the faded dreams I'd shared with Ethan, until I came to a blank page. There, in bold, confident script, I wrote a new entry: dream, to become financially independent, to help other women take control of their financial futures. It was a big dream, maybe even an impossible one, but for the first time in a long time, I felt utterly capable of chasing it. The next few months were a whirlwind of learning and growth. I kept my day job as an accountant, but every spare moment was dedicated to expanding my financial knowledge. I took online courses in investment strategies and financial planning. I attended local meetups for aspiring entrepreneurs, soaking up their experiences and advice like a sponge. One day, as I was leaving one of these meetups, a woman approached me. She introduced herself as Diane, a talent scout for a prestigious financial firm. "I couldn't help but notice your questions during the Q&A," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You seem to have a real knack for this stuff. Have you ever considered a career in finance?" I was completely taken aback. Me, a career in finance? But as I thought about it, I realized that's exactly what I'd been unknowingly working towards all these months. Diane gave me her card and invited me to interview for a junior analyst position at her firm. The old me would have hesitated, would have doubted whether I was qualified. But I wasn't that person anymore. The interview process was grueling. Multiple rounds of interviews, intense case studies, complex financial analyses. But with each challenge, I felt more alive, more engaged. This, I realized, was what I was meant to do. When the job offer finally came, I couldn't believe it. The salary was double what I'd been making as an accountant, with the potential for significant bonuses based on performance. It was more money than I'd ever earned in my life. As I sat in my tiny studio, staring at the offer letter, I couldn't help but think back to that night in the kitchen with Ethan. He had called me a witch for investing our savings. Now, that very same decision had led me to a new career, a new life, a new me. I called Sarah to share the news. As we celebrated over the phone, she said something that truly stuck with me. "Olivia, do you realize what you've done? In just a few months, you've completely turned your life around. You're like a phoenix rising from the ashes." A phoenix rising from the ashes. I liked that image. From the literal ashes of my failed marriage and shattered self-esteem, I had found my true calling. I had discovered a strength I never even knew I possessed. As I prepared for my first day at the new job, I looked at myself in the mirror. Gone was the timid, unsure woman who had fled Ethan's apartment that night. In her place stood someone confident, someone who knew her worth, someone who was undeniably fierce. I smoothed down my new blazer, a small splurge to celebrate my new job, and smiled at my reflection. "You've got this," I told myself. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. Walking into the sleek office building on my first day, I felt a thrilling mix of nervousness and excitement. This was more than just a new job. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, a chapter where I was the author, where I called the shots. As I rode the elevator up to my new office, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter where this journey took me, I would never forget the hard-won lessons I'd learned. I would use my experiences, both good and bad, to fuel my success. And someday, when I was in a position to do so, I would find a way to help other women discover their own strength, just as I had discovered mine. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into my future, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to rise. 1 year. It's absolutely amazing how much can change in just 1 year. As I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my new apartment, adjusting my crisp white blouse and smoothing down my tailored navy suit, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the timid, self-doubting Olivia who had fled her marriage with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. In her place stood a woman exuding confidence, power, and an unshakable sense of purpose. The past year had been a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs. My job as a junior analyst had been just the beginning. I threw myself into the work with a passion that surprised even me. Late nights poring over complex financial reports, early mornings analyzing market trends, I loved every single minute of it. My colleagues quickly took notice of my dedication and my surprisingly sharp insights. I still remember the day my boss called me into his office. I was nervous, of course, wondering if I had made some terrible mistake. Instead, he smiled and said, "Olivia, I've never seen anyone pick up this business as quickly as you have. How would you feel about heading up our new fintech division?" The promotion came with a significant pay raise and a level of responsibility that would have absolutely terrified me just a year ago. But now, I was ready for it. More than ready, I was hungry for it. Under my leadership, the fintech division didn't just flourish, it exploded. We developed innovative financial products that quickly caught the attention of some major players in the industry. Our success didn't go unnoticed. Soon, I was being headhunted by other firms, offered positions I never even dreamed I'd be qualified for. But it was the call from Jenna Reeves, CEO of TechFin Innovations, that changed everything. TechFin was an up-and-coming company making serious waves in the financial technology sector. They were looking for a new CEO, someone with both sharp financial acumen and a fresh perspective on technology. Someone, Jenna said, exactly like me. The interview process was intense. I spent weeks preparing, researching the company inside and out, developing a comprehensive, ambitious strategy for their future growth. When I walked into the boardroom to present to the company's executives and major shareholders, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves in my stomach. But as soon as I started speaking, laying out my vision for the company's future with unwavering conviction, the nerves vanished. This, I realized, was exactly where I belonged. 2 days later, I received the offer. Chief Executive Officer of TechFin Innovations. The salary made me dizzy just looking at it, not to mention the stock options and other perks. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the opportunity to lead, to shape the future of an entire company. As I accepted the position, I couldn't help but think back to that night in the kitchen with Ethan, when he had sneered at my investment and called me a witch. If only he could see me now. My first few months as CEO were a steep, exhilarating learning curve. I had to quickly get up to speed on every single aspect of the company's operations, from our tech development to our marketing strategies. I worked long hours, often arriving at the office before sunrise and leaving well after dark. But I loved every minute of it. I assembled a strong team around me, people who shared my vision and my relentless drive. Together, We started to implement transformative changes, streamlining our operations and relentlessly pushing for more innovative products. It wasn't always easy, of course. There were setbacks, frustrating challenges along the way. But with each obstacle we overcame, my confidence soared. One of my proudest moments came when we launched a new app designed to help low-income individuals better manage their finances. It was a project incredibly close to my heart, deeply inspired by my own past experiences of financial struggle. The app was a huge success, earning us positive press and, more importantly, genuinely helping thousands of people take control of their financial futures. As our company grew, so did my public profile. I started being invited to speak at conferences, to give interviews for prestigious financial magazines. At first, the attention made me uncomfortable. I was used to working behind the scenes, not being thrust into the glaring spotlight. But I soon realized that this platform gave me a unique opportunity to inspire others, particularly women, to pursue ambitious careers in finance and technology. I thought often of the promise I had made to myself when I first started this journey, to help other women discover their own strength. Now, I was finally in a position to do just that. I started a mentorship program within our company, specifically aimed at helping women advance in the tech and finance sectors. Seeing these women grow and succeed became one of the most rewarding aspects of my demanding job. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. There were still nights when I lay awake, riddled with self-doubt, wondering if I was really cut out for this level of responsibility. The imposter syndrome never fully went away. But I had learned to push through those doubts, to trust in my abilities and the hard-won decisions that had led me to this very point. My personal life had, understandably, taken a back seat during this time of intense professional growth. Dating seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford, both in terms of time and emotional energy. But I wasn't lonely. I had formed close, genuine friendships with several of my colleagues, and Sarah remained my absolute rock, always there to celebrate my roaring successes or offer a sympathetic ear when I desperately needed to vent. On this particular morning, as I finished getting ready for work, I felt a profound sense of calm confidence. It was going to be a big day. We were meeting with representatives from a smaller tech company that was hoping to partner with us on a new project. If the deal went through, it could open up exciting, lucrative new avenues for both our companies. As I drove to the office, I mentally reviewed the key points I wanted to discuss in the meeting. I was so focused on my thoughts that I almost missed the turn into the parking garage. Chuckling softly at myself, I parked the car and headed into the building. The receptionist greeted me with a warm, professional smile. "Good morning, Miss Walker. The representatives from Bitech are already here. Your assistant has shown them to the main conference room." I thanked her and headed to my office to grab my tablet and a few documents. As I walked, I scrolled through my emails, making sure there were no last-minute issues I needed to address before the meeting. My assistant, Jake, was waiting for me just outside the conference room. "Everything's set up, Olivia," he said, handing me a steaming cup of coffee, black, just the way I liked it. "Do you need me to sit in on the meeting?" I shook my head. "No, I think I can handle this one, but stay close in case I need any additional information." Jake nodded and retreated to his desk as I pushed open the door to the conference room. I put on my most welcoming, professional smile as I entered, ready to greet our potential new partners. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Olivia Walker, CEO of TechFin Innovations. I'm excited to discuss the possibilities of our future partnership." My voice, usually so steady, trailed off as my eyes landed on a familiar face among the Bitech representatives. Sitting there, looking smaller and more uncertain than I had ever seen him, was Ethan. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I felt a confusing rush of emotions, shock, a flicker of that old anger, a sharp, surprising twinge of that old hurt. But they passed quickly, replaced by a strange, resolute sense of calm. Ethan's knees literally buckled when he recognized me. His face, a mask of utter disbelief, as he slowly, painfully realized where we each stood now. I took a deep, steadying breath. This was my boardroom, my company, my moment. I would not let the ghosts of my past derail this crucial meeting or shake my hard-won confidence. As I was saying, I continued, my voice strong, clear, and utterly in command. I'm excited to discuss the possibilities of our future partnership. Shall we begin? I took my seat at the head of the polished table, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Ethan was still staring, his mouth slightly agape, looking like he'd seen a ghost. The other biotech representatives looked confused, clearly sensing the palpable tension, but utterly oblivious to its source. For the next hour, I led the meeting with a professionalism that would have been utterly impossible for the old Olivia. I outlined our proposal, answered every question with precision, and steered the discussion towards a mutually beneficial agreement. All the while, I could feel Ethan's eyes on me, a complex mixture of awe and regret in his gaze. As the meeting drew to a close, I stood up to shake hands with the biotech team. When I reached Ethan, our eyes met. In that moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, humbled, perhaps even a little broken. But I also saw something else. Recognition. Recognition of the strong, capable, formidable woman I had become. "Thank you all for coming," I said, addressing the room, but holding Ethan's gaze, a subtle challenge in my eyes. "We'll be in touch with our final decision soon." As the biotech team filed out, Ethan lingered behind. I could see he wanted to say something, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to explain, but this was not the time or place for that deeply personal conversation. "It was good to see you, Ethan," I said, my tone polite but utterly firm, drawing a clear line. "I hope you have a safe trip back." With that, I turned and walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. As I headed back to my office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I had faced my past head-on and emerged stronger. I had shown Ethan, and more importantly myself, just how far I had come. Whatever happened with the biotech deal, I knew one thing for certain. I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The day wasn't over yet, and there was still crucial work to be done. But as I sat down at my desk, I allowed myself a brief, private moment to appreciate the incredible journey that had brought me here. From the literal ashes of my old life, I had built something beautiful, powerful, and entirely my own. And this, I knew, was just the beginning. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless emails. But through it all, my mind kept drifting back to that electrifying moment in the conference room when I first saw Ethan. The shock in his eyes, the way his knees had almost given out. It was an image I couldn't shake. As the office slowly emptied and the sky outside my window turned a deep indigo, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I should have been reviewing the proposal from biotech, meticulously weighing the pros and cons of the potential partnership. Instead, I was replaying every single moment of that brief, intense encounter with my ex-husband. A soft knock on my office door jolted me from my reverie. It was Jake, my assistant, looking concerned. "Olivia, sorry to bother you, but there's someone here to see you," he said, his voice hesitant. "He says his name is Ethan and that it's important." My heart skipped a beat. Part of me wanted to tell Jake to send him away, to maintain the professional distance I'd kept during our meeting. But another part, a part one thought I'd long since buried, was undeniably curious. What could Ethan possibly have to say after all this time? "It's okay, Jake," I heard myself say, the words surprising even me. "Send him in." As Jake left, I stood up and moved to the front of my desk, leaning against it slightly. I wanted to face Ethan on my feet, not sitting behind the symbolic power of my new position. This wasn't about CEO Olivia facing a business associate. This was about Olivia, the woman, facing the man who had once been her husband, her everything. When Ethan walked in, he looked nothing like the confident businessman from this morning's meeting. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly, in sheer frustration or distress. He stopped a few feet away from me, his eyes roaming over my face as if he was seeing me, truly seeing me, for the very first time. "Olivia," he began, his voice trembling, full of an emotion I couldn't quite place, but it sounded fragile. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I raised a hand, silencing him instantly. My voice was steady, sharp when I spoke. You didn't know what, Ethan? That I was more than the quiet little wife you thought you owned? That I could accomplish more without you holding me back, dragging me down? He flinched at my words, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Ethan, the charming man who had swept me off my feet in college, who had promised me the world. But that man was long gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone broken. I'm sorry, he said, the words seemingly dragged from deep within him, raw and painful. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am so sorry for what I did to you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it, only a brittle edge. You're right. It doesn't change anything. Ethan took a step closer, his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. Olivia, please. When I saw you in that conference room, looking so confident, so powerful, I realized what a fool I'd been, what I'd thrown away. I could feel my carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble, just slightly. The hurt, the anger, the sharp, visceral betrayal, emotions I thought I'd dealt with long ago came rushing back, a sickening wave. Do you have any idea what you did to me, Ethan? Do you know how long it took me to rebuild my life after you shattered it? He nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I do now. Seeing you today, hearing about your success, it made me realize how much I destroyed. Not just our marriage, Olivia, but your trust, your self-esteem, your very spirit. I turned away from him, walking to the window. The city lights twinkled below, a vibrant, dazzling tapestry, reminding me of that night I'd left our apartment, unsure of my future, clutching a single suitcase. Why are you here, Ethan? What do you want from me? I heard him take a deep, ragged breath. I want a chance to make things right, to show you how much I've changed, how sorry I am for everything I did. I spun around, anger flaring bright and hot in my chest. You think this is a chance for redemption? It's not. You threw me away, you brutalized me, and now you have to live with that. Ethan's shoulders slumped, defeat written across his entire posture. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But seeing you today, truly realizing what I lost, I couldn't walk away without at least trying to apologize. For a long moment, we stood in silence, the immense weight of our shared, fractured history hanging heavily between us. I studied Ethan's face, trying to reconcile the man before me with the one who had struck me that fateful night. He looked older, wearier, burdened. There was a profound sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Finally, I spoke, my voice softer now, but no less firm, no less resolute. Ethan, I appreciate your apology, but you're right. You don't deserve my forgiveness. What you did, it can't be undone with a simple I'm sorry. He nodded, accepting my words, his gaze meeting mine. I understand. I needed you to know how much I regret what I did. How proud I am of what you've accomplished. I felt a strange, unexpected mix of emotions wash over me. Anger, sadness, and unexpectedly, a sliver of pity. The man standing before me was a shadow of the Ethan I had once loved. In that moment, I realized that while I had risen, phoenix-like, from the ashes of our failed marriage, he had been consumed by them. Thank you for saying that, I said, surprised to find that I genuinely meant it. But Ethan, you need to understand something. My success, my happiness, they're not in spite of what you did. They're because of it. His brow furrowed in confusion, and I continued, my voice gaining power. That night, when you hit me and told me to leave, it was the wake-up call I desperately needed. It made me realize that I had been living my life for you, dimming my own light to make you shine brighter. When you threw me away, you actually forced me to find my own path, my own brilliance. Ethan's eyes widened as the full weight of my words slowly, painfully sank in. Olivia, but I wasn't finished. I'm not telling you this to make you feel better, Ethan. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that redemption isn't something I can give you. It's something you have to find for yourself. He nodded slowly, a profound mix of understanding and regret crossing his face. You're right. I see that now. I wish things could have been different. So do I admit it, a sigh escaping my lips. But they're not. And now we both have to live with the choices we've made. We stood in silence for another moment, the unspoken history, the pain, the raw truth of our connection hanging heavy between us. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice tentative. What happens now with Bytech? I straightened, shifting back into my role as CEO, the formidable woman he'd met earlier. That depends on whether the partnership makes sense for TechFin. I won't let our personal history influence a business decision, Ethan. I hope you can do the same. He nodded, a flicker of genuine respect finally crossing his face. Of course. I should go. Thank you for hearing me out, Olivia. As he turned to leave, I called out a final, unexpected gesture.
Ethan.
He paused, looking back at me, a question in his eyes. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. A sad, wistful smile crossed his face. Thank you, Olivia. And congratulations on everything. With that, he was gone, leaving me alone in my office once more. I sank into my chair, emotionally drained, utterly exhausted. Seeing Ethan, confronting our past, it had stirred up feelings I thought I'd long since put to rest. But as I sat there, watching the city lights twinkle outside my window, I realized something incredibly important. The encounter hadn't shaken me as it might have once done. Instead, it had powerfully reaffirmed just how far I'd come, how much I'd grown. I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Sarah, are you free for a late dinner? I've had quite a day, and I could seriously use a friend. An hour later, I was sitting across from Sarah in our favorite little Italian restaurant, recounting the day's unbelievable events over a glass of red wine. As I finished my story, Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Olivia, I'm so incredibly proud of you, she said, her eyes shining with genuine admiration. The way you handled Ethan, both in the meeting and after. You've come so far from that night on my couch. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine. You know, seeing Ethan today made me realize something profound. For so long, I was angry at him for what he did, for the pain he inflicted.
But now?
I'm almost grateful. Sarah raised an eyebrow, a slight smile playing on her lips. Grateful? I nodded.
Yes.
If he hadn't done what he did, if he hadn't driven me to that breaking point, I might never have found the strength to become who I am now. I might have stayed in that unhappy marriage, always wondering what I could have been, forever dimming my own light. As we finished our meal and said our goodbyes, I felt a deep, abiding sense of peace settle over me. The encounter with Ethan hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. It had allowed me to finally close a chapter of my life that had been left painfully, achingly unfinished. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my investment app. The stock that had started this whole incredible journey, the one Ethan had called me a witch for investing in, was still in my portfolio. It had grown exponentially over the past year, a constant, powerful reminder of the moment my life had irrevocably changed. For a moment, I considered selling it. It felt like the final, symbolic step in letting go of my past. But then I smiled and put my phone away. That stock wasn't just a reminder of what I'd lost. It was a soaring, undeniable symbol of what I'd gained: my independence, my confidence, my powerful new life. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Ethan's unexpected appearance had stirred up old memories, yes. But it had also shown me, unequivocally, just how much I'd grown. I was no longer the woman who needed his approval or feared his anger. I was Olivia Walker, CEO, survivor, and the fierce architect of my own destiny. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, decisions about the Bytech partnership, strategies for TechFin's continued growth, the constant juggling act of leadership. But for tonight, I was utterly content. I had faced my past, and I had emerged stronger. Whatever the future held, I knew I was ready for it. As I pulled into my driveway, I made a mental note to call my mentor, Diane, from the financial firm tomorrow morning. It was time to expand our women's leadership program to amplify its reach. After all, redemption might not be free, but empowerment? That was something I could give freely, helping other women find their own paths to success and happiness, just as I had. With that thought, that quiet, powerful promise, I stepped into my home, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The weeks following my encounter with Ethan were a whirlwind of purposeful activity. I threw myself into work with renewed vigor, determined to channel the intense energy from our confrontation into fuel for positive, lasting change. The Bitech partnership was thoroughly evaluated, and despite my personal history with Ethan, I made absolutely sure our decision was based solely on objective business merits. In the end, we decided to move forward with a modified version of the partnership. It was the right choice for TechFin, and I was incredibly proud of my team's ability to separate personal feelings from professional decisions. When I called Ethan to inform him of our decision, his voice was filled with a mixture of relief and a surprising note of respect. "Thank you, Olivia," he said, genuine gratitude in his tone. "I promise you won't regret this decision." "I'm sure I won't," I replied, keeping my tone professional, courteous but firm. "This partnership has the potential to benefit both our companies greatly. Let's make the most of it." As I hung up the phone, I felt a deep, definitive sense of closure. Ethan was now, finally, just another business associate. Our personal history was filed away, definitively in the past, exactly where it belonged. With that chapter truly, irrevocably closed, I turned my full attention to the future. The women's leadership program I had started at TechFin was gaining incredible traction, and I decided it was time to take it to the next level to make an even bigger impact. I reached out to my old mentor, Diane, who had first given me a chance in the cutthroat finance world. "Olivia, darling." Diane's warm, vibrant voice filled the line. "I was wondering when you'd call. I've been following your progress, sweetie. You're making serious waves in the industry, girl." I laughed, feeling a rush of genuine affection for the woman who had believed in me when I was just starting out, scared and uncertain. "Thanks, Diane. Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling. I've got an idea I want to run by you." Over the next hour, Diane and I passionately hashed out plans for an industry-wide mentorship program specifically for women in finance and tech. The audacious idea was to pair established, powerful leaders like ourselves with up-and-coming talent, providing crucial guidance, unwavering support, and unparalleled opportunities for growth. "It's brilliant, Olivia," Diane exclaimed when I finished outlining the plan. "Count me in, and I know at least a dozen other incredible women who would jump at the chance to be involved." The next few months were a blur of planning meetings, late-night strategy sessions, and countless cups of strong coffee. We decided to call our initiative Breaking Chains, a powerful nod to breaking the chains of limitations often placed on women in our industry, on women everywhere. The launch event for Breaking Chains was held on a crisp autumn evening. As I stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of eager faces, some familiar, many new, I felt a surge of emotion so profound it almost stole my breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, clear, and ringing with conviction, "we're here tonight because we believe in the transformative power of potential. We believe that talent knows no gender, that innovation knows no boundaries. Breaking Chains is more than just a mentorship program. It's a movement." As I spoke about my own arduous journey, from a woman who profoundly doubted her own worth to the CEO of a thriving company, I saw heads nodding in recognition, eyes shining with a mixture of empathy and hope. I didn't shy away from the darker parts of my story, including my harrowing experience with domestic violence. It wasn't easy to share, the words catching in my throat, but I knew it was absolutely vital. "I stand before you today, not to spite my past, but because of it," I said, my voice growing stronger, imbued with fierce resolve. Every obstacle, every setback, every agonizing moment of doubt, they all led me here. And now, it's our turn to lift others up, to be the mentors we wished we had when we were starting out. The response was overwhelming, truly breathtaking. By the end of the night, We had more mentors and men signed up than we had initially even hoped for. As I mingled with a vibrant crowd, shaking hands and exchanging contact information, I felt a sense of purpose stronger and more fulfilling than ever before. One young woman, barely out of college, approached me with tears glistening in her eyes. "Miss Walker," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Your story, it's so similar to mine. I was starting to think I didn't belong in this industry, but hearing you speak tonight, it's given me so much hope." I squeezed her hand, remembering how utterly lost and afraid I had felt at her age. "What's your name?" "Zoe," she replied, her voice still a little shaky. "Well, Zoe, let me tell you something," I said, looking her directly in the eye, conveying all my conviction. "You absolutely belong here, and I'm going to make sure you have every opportunity to prove it." As the event finally wound down, Sarah found me by the bar, a wide, triumphant grin plastered across her face. "Olivia Walker," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. "Look at you, changing the world, one mentorship at a time." I laughed, feeling a powerful mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I don't know about changing the world, but if we can change even a few lives, truly impact them, it'll be worth it. In the months that followed, Breaking Chains grew beyond our wildest expectations. We partnered with universities, offering internships and scholarships to promising female students. We organized workshops and conferences, bringing together women from all levels of the industry to share invaluable knowledge and hard-won experiences. The impact was tangible, undeniable. I started receiving emails and heartfelt letters from women across the country, sharing their stories of how the program had helped them gain confidence, secure promotions, or even bravely start their own companies. One afternoon, as I was reviewing some proposals in my office, Jake knocked on my door. "Olivia, there's someone here to see you. She says she's an old friend." Curious, I told him to send her in. To my surprise, it was Diane. "Surprise," she said, sweeping into the room with her usual infectious flair. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to see the woman of the hour." I stood to greet her, genuinely happy to see my old mentor. "Diane, this is unexpected. What brings you to Chicago?" She settled into the chair across from my desk, her eyes twinkling mischievously. "Oh, a little business, a little pleasure. But mostly, I wanted to see you in action, CEO Walker." We spent the next hour catching up, discussing the phenomenal progress of Breaking Chains and the latest industry trends. As our conversation drew to a close, Diane's expression grew serious, her voice softening. "Olivia," she said, leaning forward, her gaze unwavering, "I want you to know how incredibly proud I am of you. When I first met you, I saw potential. But what you've accomplished, what you're doing for other women, it's beyond anything I could have ever imagined." I felt a lump form in my throat, hot and tight.
Thank you, Diane.
"I truly couldn't have done it without your guidance." She waved off my words with a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. You had it in you all along. I just gave you a little push in the right direction." As Diane left, I found myself reflecting deeply on how far I'd come. From the scared, uncertain woman who had fled her marriage with nothing but a suitcase, to the CEO of a successful company and the founder of a groundbreaking mentorship program. The journey hadn't been easy, no. But every single painful, exhilarating step had been worth it. That evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I received an email that made me pause, my breath catching. It was from Ethan. For a moment, my finger hovered over the delete button, a flicker of that old pain, that old habit. But curiosity, an unyielding part of my new self, got the better of me, and I opened it. "Dear Olivia," it read, "I heard about your Breaking Chains initiative. I just wanted to say congratulations. What you're doing, it's important. I know our history is complicated, but I truly am proud of the woman you've become. You're changing lives, Olivia. Never doubt that." I read the email twice, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. There was no bitterness, no anger, just a quiet, profound acknowledgement of how far we'd both come, in our own separate ways. I clicked reply and typed a simple, direct message.
Thank you, Ethan.
I hope you're finding your own path forward. As I sent the email, I felt the last lingering remnants of my old life finally fall away. The chains that had once bound me, to Ethan, to self-doubt, to paralyzing fear, were well and truly broken. I gathered my things and headed out of the office, nodding goodbye to the few employees still diligently at their desks. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I took a deep, cleansing breath, feeling an expansive sense of contentment wash over me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Drinks to celebrate the latest breaking chain success? I smiled, a genuine, joyful smile, and typed back, absolutely. Meet you at our usual spot in 20. As I walked to my car, I thought about the entire, winding journey that had brought me here. The pain, the struggles, the hard-won triumphs, they had all shaped me into the woman I was today. And that woman, I realized with a fierce, quiet pride, was someone I was truly proud to be. I wasn't naive enough to think the road ahead would always be smooth. There would be new challenges, new setbacks, new moments of doubt. But I was ready for them. More than that, I was excited for them. Because with each obstacle overcome, each fear conquered, I grew stronger, more resilient. As I drove through the city streets, the brilliant lights of Chicago twinkling around me, I felt a surge of overwhelming gratitude. Gratitude for the friends who had unwaveringly supported me, for the mentors who had so generously guided me, and yes, even for the hardships that had ultimately strengthened me. The future stretched out before me, vast and full of exhilarating possibilities, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them. Because I was Olivia Walker, survivor, leader, mentor. My story was far from over. I'm still processing just how much my life changed because of one truly awful moment. If something similarly transformative, whether good or bad, has ever happened to you, what was your wake-up call? Or maybe you've had an unexpected encounter with someone from your past who irrevocably changed your future. Share your stories and reflections in the comments below. I'm reading everything, and I believe we learn so much from each other's journeys.